Why does God want you to have a relationship with Him? Is knowing God the end game? Or does God have something greater in mind? The primary purpose of prayer is to align our will with the Father's will. Or to put it another way, to be passionately committed to the things that God is most passionate about. And what is God most passionate about? Well, the answer is simple. It's people. People coming to know Him, people returning to Him, people having a relationship with Him. And we see this passion throughout Scripture. For example, in Genesis chapter 3, after Adam and Eve sinned, what did they do? They hid themselves in the garden. What did God do? He came into the garden looking for them. Not to condemn them, but to restore their relationship to Him. We also see this passion in Luke 19 as Jesus walks into Jericho and all the people are following Him, and He stops at the base of a sycamore tree. Because in that sycamore tree was a Jewish tax collector, a man considered to be a crook by the people. And he was in the tree to get a better view of Jesus. But what does Jesus do? He stops the parade, looks in the tree, and says, Zacchaeus, come down, because I want to spend the day with you. Because Jesus wanted to transform Zacchaeus' life. And it's in verse 10 of that story that we discover Jesus' mission, when He says, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. And we see this passion most clearly, though, in Luke 15, the parable of the prodigal son. As the father sees his son coming back home after walking away from everything. And what does the father do? He runs to his son. He embraces him. He kisses him. Puts a robe on him, a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet. And it doesn't end there. He throws a party because his son who was lost is now found. His son who was dead is now alive. You see, the heart of prayer is pursuing a relationship with God. That's where prayer begins. But friends, it doesn't end there. For the more time you spend with God, pursuing a relationship with Him that is real and personal, the more your heart will begin aligning with His heart. And the more He will begin to give you His passions, His burden for people. In Brian Allerid's book, When People Pray, he takes us to the book of Acts. And he points out some things that often we may miss when reading through this amazing book. Listen to what Brian writes. The New Testament church was birthed in a prayer meeting. But the power of the Spirit didn't stay in the upper room. It moved the disciples to the streets of Jerusalem to share the gospel. And as Acts 2:41 proclaims, 3,000 people responded and were water baptized that day. And it didn't stop there. Throughout the book of Acts, we see prayer and mission interwoven together, fueling each other. The book of Acts is a story of what happened in between prayer meetings. The more the disciples prayed, the more they shared their faith. And the more they shared their faith, the more it brought them back to their knees to pray for God's continued courage and boldness to witness for Him. Don't miss this. Real prayer, prayer that is centered on pursuing the heart of God, always drives us to mission. And mission always drives us back to prayer. As we come to see our need for God's grace, God's courage, God's boldness, as we go out and join Him in His mission each day. As Brian Allerid points out in his book, prayer is not the end game. Mission is. Whereas the heart of prayer is communion with God, the edges of prayer are always mission. The reason so many of us rarely engage with those around us with the gospel is because of the simple fact we don't see people the way God sees people. We walk by Zacchaeus every day and we don't see them, at least not in the way that God does. That is why pursuing the heart of God is so critical to joining Jesus in His mission. It's as you daily spend time with Him in prayer that you begin to recognize His voice and recognize all that He is doing in and around your life each and every day.